You are different from your early medieval ancestors in one very important respect. You know what you look like, and they didn't. They haven't got a mirror to look in to see what they look like. Now, that is in many ways a simplification, because those at the very top of society probably had mirrors from the early 12th century onwards. The lower ranks in society probably from the 15th or at the latest the early 16th century onwards. So it's different depending on which ancestor you're looking at in the past. But that awareness of what yourself is a really thought-provoking starting point. Because if you were to ask a peasant in, say, I don't know, 1250 to draw a picture of himself, and he's never seen himself except in a muddy puddle, so he doesn't actually know what he looks like, he wouldn't do what we would do and try and draw a childlike picture of a face and identity. We automatically think in terms of that mirror image as being part of our identity. Whereas somebody before they had a mirror would not have done that. They would have thought of themselves as what they did. A blacksmith might have thought of himself represented by his anvil, or somebody who was an illiterate squire might have thought of himself represented by his coat of arms. There's all sorts of different speculative ways we could see people would understand themselves. But the truth of the matter is, they wouldn't have had a sense of self, because what I'm talking about wouldn't have occurred to them, and no one would have ever asked them. There were no diaries in the early Middle Ages. There were no autobiographies, apart from one or two extreme examples, such as the one by Peter Abelard, but he's not like most people. So there isn't that sense of self amongst the vast majority of people. So without that, you have to start to reconstruct, what is it that makes a sense of self? Is it just the mirror? And no, it's not in many ways. It's the decisions we make that form us as individuals. It's that sense of what other people think of you. And here we can start to map out in the past how society forced individuals to think about themselves. Now, in the 1140s, theologians defined and came up with and defined more accurately and then spread the doctrine of purgatory. The doctrine of purgatory says you don't go straight to heaven or straight to hell, that most people will go to a holding bay, purgatory, where they will spend a long time waiting for enough prayers to be said for their souls so they can enter the kingdom of heaven. It was a very good way for the church to maximize the resources being produced in the 12th century. But just think about that for a moment. If you were angry, and we can have lots of legal records and similar to know that medieval people would launch out violently when they got angry, well, you would perhaps think about yourself differently if you knew you were going to be judged for it. Moreover, if you knew that people were going to have to pray for your soul to enter the kingdom of heaven after you died, then you would also think that, how are they going to think about me when I'm no longer here? Until the 1140s, you've only got to deal with people in day-to-day life, whether they hate you, whether they, trod on their toes or something or other. But after the 1140s, you're going to have that consideration about what they think of you when you're no longer here, a sense of self which is independent of your physical existence. And I think that, which you can also see reflected in the behavioral books written by aristocrats, how you should behave, is indicative of a growing sense of self. I mean, it goes without saying that what we're trying to do here is one of the most difficult forms of history you could possibly imagine, because you're trying to uncover something that was never written down at the time. But I think you can start to analyze how social changes made people more self-aware, increasingly so, and the choice of how you decorate yourself and adorn yourself, as that increased over the post-13th century period, how that ended up with such an acute sense of self that people did start writing diaries and autobiographies by the end of the 16th century.